The year is 1945, and Allied forces in World War II come across a hidden German hangar in the woods, and what they discover would spark controversies that continue to this day. The Luftwaffe, the German aerial warfare branch, was secretly developing an aircraft that they believed could help them win the war, led by none other than Hermann Göring. What they find is one of the so-called German secret weapons, the Horten HO-229 V3 prototype, an otherworldly-looking jet-powered flying wing aircraft. The HO-229 housed 2 jet engines, integrated into a sleek flying wing design, and resembled nothing else of the era. In the late stages of World War II, the Americans initiated Operation Paperclip, an effort to capture advanced German weapons research and keep it from falling into the hands of the advancing Soviet forces. Through Operation Seahorse, the HO-229 was shipped back to the US in 1945, and the Allies removed yet another chess piece from the board of Germany's high-tech military arsenal. But the story doesn't end there. In fact, it raises some fascinating questions. Was the HO-229's sleek design purpose-built to evade radar? Was the Northrop Grumman B-2 stealth bomber influenced or even copied from the HO-229? And what if Germany had achieved production of the HO-229? Could it have turned the tide and changed the outcome of the war? We wanted to take a moment to pause and thank all of our viewers and subscribers. And if you are looking for another way to support us, we are now on Patreon. To understand why the HO-229 existed in the first place, let's look at the forces that drove its creation. In 1943, the so-called 3x1000 was Hermann Göring's call for a light bomber capable of carrying 1,000 kilograms of ordnance over 1,000 kilometers at 1,000 kilometers per hour. These requirements would allow Germany to extend their reach into Britain and would prove ambitious. Ultimately powered by 2 jet engines and constructed with a center pod made of steel tubing and wings made from plywood, the Horten brothers, Reimar and Walter, believed the answer lay in a unique flying wing design. Foregoing the conventional fuselage and wing construction, the entire HO-229 generated lift while greatly reducing drag. After some convincing, Göring was sold on the scale of the brothers' ambition and their unconventional design, awarding them the 3x1000 contract. The first version of the 229 was an unpowered glider with fixed landing gear and took its first flight in March of 1944. The second version was powered by Junkers Jumo turbojet engines and took its first test flights between December of 44 and February of 45. It reportedly displayed very good handling qualities with only moderate lateral instability, which is a common characteristic of tailless aircraft. At this point, research and development responsibilities were handed over to coach builder Gotha Wagenfabrik, and the HO-229 was subsequently called the Gotha GO-229. The brothers then shifted their focus to the next evolution of their design with the America Bomber project. More on this later, but the third version was larger than previous prototypes, the shape also being refined throughout, moving toward pre-production models that had been ordered. However, with the war coming to a close, none were ever produced. After the war, Reimar Horten immigrated to Argentina, where he continued to work on gliders and other experimental aircraft. Walter remained in Germany and would become an officer in the post-war German Air Force. But this wouldn't be the last we'd hear from the Horten brothers. In the 1983 book Nur Flügel, translated Only the Wing, Reimar Horten claimed that he wanted to add charcoal to the glue in between the plywood layers used in the 229 skin, saying, "It should diffuse radar beams and make the aircraft invisible on radar." While Reimar was referring to a future version of the production model that was never made, it certainly seems plausible that it could have been used on the V3 prototype that the Allies discovered. And although we will come back to his claim shortly, this book set off a debate among aviation enthusiasts and World War II buffs alike, further fueled by a 2009 National Geographic documentary on the 229. That documentary was an attempt to determine if the HO-229 was the world's first true stealth fighter bomber. Northrop Grumman engineers painstakingly rebuilt a non-flying replica over a period of 3 months and then exhaustively tested its radar signature. Their conclusion? There was just a 20% improvement in radar detection range over planes of the time. It turns out that the nose, the inlets, and the canopy were primary weaknesses in terms of radar signature. Remember that one of the keys to Britain's defense in keeping German air raids at bay was their advanced radar system, also called chain home, which had a range of about 100 miles. The Royal Air Force usually had about 19 minutes advance warning of impending air raids and could even see German fighters marshalling before they crossed the channel. But with the Tu-29's reduced radar detection range combined with the speed afforded the jet engines, Northrop Grumman concluded that it would have reduced the warning to a mere 8 minutes at high altitude and less than 3 minutes if flown at low altitude. In 2012, a research paper was published by the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, shedding some light on an otherwise dark topic. The paper, entitled "Is It Stealth?", sets out to examine the claims of Reimar Horten, as well as analyze the HO-229 V3 prototype for presence of carbon in between the plywood layers. In short, their conclusion was, Reimar Horten's published statement in the 1980s about wanting to add charcoal to the production model must be taken at face value as an idea. A production model was never fabricated, and the prototype does not show any clear evidence of charcoal as a stealth ingredient. So, was the Horten purpose-built to avoid radar detection, or was it an inherent consequence of the basic flying wing design? It's unlikely that it was purpose-built. Its radar signature was only marginally improved, about 20% less than other aircraft of the day, and no evidence of radar-absorbing materials was found. It's more likely that the reduced drag of the flying wing combined with the jet engines would allow it to meet Goering's requirement of 3 by 1,000. Looking at true stealth aircraft like the F-117 Nighthawk and the B-2, you'll notice the engines are placed on top, shielding it from ground radar systems. While the HO-229 had front-mount engines that would suggest their design prioritized performance over low observability. And according to Lockheed Martin analyst Dennis Overholser, the 4 keys to stealth are shape, 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 and materials. He worked heavily on the F-117, considered to be the first operational stealth aircraft designed for warfare. So, was the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber influenced or even copied from the HO-229? Probably not. Jack Northrop made flying wings the focus of his work during the 1930s, and Northrop has several designs before, during, and after the war. According to a 2005 History Channel documentary, Modern Marvels, Secret Luftwaffe Aircraft of World War II, Northrop Grumman engineers visited the HO-229 V3 prototype, but little is known of their visit. It's more likely that the early B-2 design, kicked off in 1979, was based on earlier Northrop designs like the YB-49, not the Horten HO-229. But if the Germans had more time to get the HO-229 into production, could that have changed the outcome of the war? Again, it's unlikely. Jets were a very cutting-edge technology, and jet fuel availability would have been a major issue for Germany, especially this late in the war where oil shortages were a big problem. All flying wing aircraft of this vintage were difficult to fly, and although a promising experiment, the first jet-powered HO-229 prototype crashed on only its 3rd flight, killing its pilot. Without a tail or vertical stabilizers, the flying wing design poses some lateral instability in its flight characteristics, and a fully production-level flying wing wouldn't take to the skies until 1989 with the B-2. In those 4 decades, mankind would have broken free of the Earth and landed on the Moon before the dream of a stable flying wing aircraft would be realized. The HO-229 was a groundbreaking proof of concept, but it was far too early for the technology of the day, and until flight control computers and fly-by-wire systems came into their own in the 1970s, it would remain just an unstable dream. The Horten HO-229 was a remarkable glimpse into what the future of stealth aviation could be, and was decades ahead of its time. The radical jet-powered flying wing design would have many benefits, and once fly-by-wire computer systems entered the equation, the advances could finally be realized. If you would like to go even deeper, check out David Mira's interviews with the Horten brothers in the 80s and 90s. Although the Smithsonian has not digitized the nearly 250 different tapes and CDs gifted to them, some of their descriptions of their content is quite interesting. You might also want to take a look at the Smithsonian research paper as well as the Nat Geo and History Channel documentaries. We will link all of the resources below. And if the thought of a semi-stealth German bomber capable of slipping past British defenses isn't terrifying enough, Hermann Goering was determined to have nuclear weapon capabilities by 1946. He commissioned the brothers to work on an even larger transatlantic bomber project called the America Bomber. Dubbed the Horten 18, it was a much larger version, based on the HO-229. If the Allies hadn't won the war when they did, and the German war machine continued on, could nuclear attacks on the US have become reality? And whatever happened to the German aircraft that would destroy New York and Washington, D.C.? That's a subject for another video. If you enjoyed this video, we would be honored to have your subscription so you can get notified of more videos like this. We're 2-Bit Da Vinci. Thank you for watching.